So Asal, Coralie, I knew I was going to get this wrong. Karkanamgi. And Deborah Lanzini. I'm going to do it again 3 times before I finish this, so help me, I'll work out how to squeeze it in. One of the things I found out, interestingly, just before we started this, is Deborah has only recently arrived in Australia. And so bringing also a perspective in, again, about having not seen our established patterns of very recently, I think will be quite useful. But you two, you are the future of the world. So that's why we've got you here. And very different backgrounds. So you've worked your way up through technology in a very, very rapid space of time, and so gathering a huge amount of experience and insights in that time, and clearly very talented. And you're looking at a very broad range of the whole almost philosophy around how technology is used, as well as the tech itself. So they're very clearly deep thinkers. So I'm going to begin again with the same question I've thrown to the others. Is what do you think is the most significant change that employers and managers need to start thinking about to leverage technology and create this the business of the future, and to get people like you working for them?
Hi, thank you for having me here with these amazing speakers. I thought when I arrived that it could be a gap between you and me or what I do, but I couldn't say it, which is great, because I think the conversation need to be closer with different actors. Saying that, I'm an anthropologist, and I have been working in tech design, researching tech design from that very classic way to research, like I'm going there and looking what people do and then thinking about that with others. And I have been researching about new technologies or emerging technologies now with techies, how they imagine the world they are designing for. And then what I learned from them, and I think it's important in this continuity of the 2 previous conversations, is most of the time they don't see a huge distinction between job and life and technology. They do technology. They live with that. And most of the time we try to draw these borders to see how they will be better in the job or how will we create this experience. But when I talk with them, I have been researching with people doing IoT in Europe and now automation technologies, and they never talk about the technology they do. They talk about what they do with others in everyday life, in the job, outside the job, what they want. And this morning I asked an engineer that is at the moment visiting in my house how he imagined the future in 8 years of the digital transformation and with this emerging technologies could bring. And he said, what I want is robots doing the job and we doing whatever we want. So what you want to do, what I do is technology. So it's kind of like, I think we need to, the thing that we need to think about is how we are imagining the relationship between technology and us. You know, I have heard in Europe many times we need a human-centric future of work, but technology is humans. We do technology. How we do that, how we think about that is what needs to change. And change is not something that will come from abroad. We can't, as many of you said, we need to invest in how we create this change and how this change is happening over there in the industries, with the talent, in the universities. Australia has an amazing, diverse way of deal with this, from organizations, from universities, from the industry, startups, which I'm also amazed about the startups here because I thought I'm going there. Let's see what happened. And then health startups in Melbourne is incredible. It's just much bigger than Europe, and it's I didn't know that. And most of people researching areas related to technology, they don't know what is going on there. But how we are imagining the role of people doing technology and for what, is we are not very well doing that. And COVID is an example of that. We couldn't imagine nothing different. We did the same way. We prioritized economy in an old school way, which wasn't actually effective at all. And it seemed abstract. But we need to understand how we want to relate with technology, what means a human-centric future, how we create that future, and all together. It looks like very positive, but it's what I really believe we should be doing.
Thank you. Assail.
Hi everyone, my name is Asel, and I'm from KPMG, hence the blue sort of attire, blue socks. And Susan, I don't take part in many panel discussions if my answers are too brief. Feel free to prompt me further. But I think your question is quite interesting, and I think from a personal experience, I think it all comes down to purpose and how well that aligns with the work I do. Because if you think about it, you spend so much time at work, 5 days of the week working if you work full time. And if that doesn't align with what you want to achieve in life, I think it's very easy to get demotivated. And one of the reasons why I like working in the current team I'm working with Georgia is because our work involves helping clients sort of innovate and grow. And I love doing that and love helping people. That's one of the things I do in my free time. I volunteer. And I can also do that at work and get paid for it. That's even better, right? So I think it all comes down to that. And what I've also seen is there are certain tasks, even within work, that don't actually align with your purpose or don't actually have meaning to it. And that's when I feel like technology can really help with automating this redundant and mundane task. And so that you could actually focus on things that actually, you feel like you're adding value.
You've just reminded me, I heard a great line from a recruiter I was on a panel with a couple of weeks ago. And their comment was, don't hire really, really smart people and get them to do stupid things. And I thought, oh gosh, as soon as someone said it out loud, you went, but that's what we do all the time. So you two are at the centre of a bit of a whirlpool. Generational change, you can see that happening and quite rapidly, not just within what we've historically, as Chris mentioned, called IT, but across the board. And it's in every vocation. It's in community sectors. It's across all industries. So when you look at yourselves, how do you see it for yourself being different about how you use technology and all the things that it brings and what you're going to pull out of it?
I think firstly, I think I come from a very sort of interesting generation because I did get to experience dial-up internet. And YouTube videos used to buffer every time you press play, right? And then halfway through the video it stops because your mum picks up the phone because she wants to talk to a friend and the internet disconnects, right? And then we see things like high-speed internet, and I feel like people take it for granted now. Because we used to, if you wanted to download a game, you had to put it on in the morning, come back the next day, and 20% done, right? Wait another week for you to play the game. And even during sort of, if I compare high school and university, right? When I finished high school, servers were like physical hardware, and databases were, SQL. And then after I finished university, servers are on the cloud now, and then the databases are non-SQL or document databases. And it's just amazing how technology moves and evolves in such a short period of time, in 4 years. And then I come to work and I sort of look at how people have been doing work in the last 4 years. It hasn't evolved much, right? Yes, there's fantastic technology out there, but people don't actually use it. And I think part of the reason is a mindset thing, like you mentioned. There's always this saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? I think we need to challenge that a little bit, right? Sometimes you can use technology to improve things. And also the other thing is, I feel like people are very slow to change. And they're a bit hesitant because they love being familiar with things, right? And this is why, when companies develop a new UI, they release it through increments, right? They don't usually do a big bang. And this is why there was such a big fuss when Instagram changed their logo. No one liked it at the start, right? But now no one cares. It's just change needs to be quite incremental, but it needs to happen. Just because people don't like change, it doesn't mean you don't change, right? And then I think the challenge is finding technology to help companies with that. Take, for instance, things like virtual reality and augmented reality, right? I feel like this. I've already feel smart saying those words, right? But there's fantastic applications for those things, especially in the engineering field. But then I also feel like at the same time people are a little bit lazy because someone needs to sit down and build those digital assets, and no one's willing to do that. And also making sure whatever you're trying to introduce is compatible with your technology landscape at the company, right? There's so many hurdles that you need to go through. Compatibility, that's one of the things, and then there's risk and security and so many things, right? And because of that, it's just very slow. And as a part of my job, I do get to work with quite a lot of clients, and it's just amazing to see the biggest problems they're facing is because of the legacy systems. And sometimes they can't solve these problems because they can't find the talent or a programmer that knows that language because they're probably retired now, right? So it's a very sort of interesting space to be in.
It's interesting also, just before I go to Deborah, I was visiting someone an hour from Melbourne on the weekend on a rural property, and there was a university student trying to load up an assignment. I had to drive them into the next town, which was 10 minutes away, so they could upload the assignment, and that apparently is the regular event. It's an hour from Melbourne, for goodness sakes. Deborah, how do you see tech coming into both your life personally and the people that you're talking to?
First I have to say something that is not nice, but things are changing. Not how we think they should be. But we have a problem in technology with that should be. People should behave. People don't change behavior because we want it or because we ask it or because one day we say, now you need to use this. That is something we know. So we need to focus on that. Change is already there, so ground up that change. What is going on in life, in industries, in tech development? And one thing that I have been observing lately in health, because I'm in a project I'm doing with Europe, Norway, and Australia. Norway is Europe, but not in terms of the European Commission, so Norway. And about how workers are dealing with automation, with robotization and digitalization in health, construction, and services. And we are doing field work in Melbourne and different locations in Norway. And what happens is when you talk with people with that, with the assumption that they will resist some technology coming to do what they do, then you realize they are like open arms, waiting for something that, as Asel said, help them with things that they don't want to do or are at risk for the well-being, or that could help to improve the life of others. And then many times when I go to the field, any hospital, Bentley Hospital, to say, because they're very an innovative institution in Australia. And I ask things like, how you want this change? They know more than myself about the technology they're using, the technology they need, the technology they want, how technology could be designed for that. So sometimes, and because I'm in an automation decision-making center, and there's a lot of techies working there, sometimes it's better to have techies and, in this case, nurses, and anyone invited to the conversation to start to think a change, instead of saying, you need a software for diagnosis, and you need to deal with this software that will come in. And I think you said about mind setting is a word you brought, and I think it's crucial, but our mind setting is first crucial to think how we are promising things that will never happen because changes never are how we imagine they are, but not talking with the people in the situations that know better what they need and the behavior they expect to have and how to transform that. So talking about transformation, not talking about war, talking about race, and talking instead of change about transformations. And also other thing that happened in our generation, I believe, or in us, because I believe we are different generations, but we are in the same conversation. And we don't, and I think you said literally, but we don't want anymore to think about outcomes or isolated goals. We want an environmental movement, we want a generation movement, we want better life for elders, we want many things that today, differently 10 years ago when I started to study IoT, that people want better cities or better waste management. Now we want a well-being, we want a better life for all of us, for humans, for species. We're in a different moment. So change also need to be thinking differently. And ground, as in our lab, we work a lot about this ground up concept that Sarah Pink brought in, a great researcher in Australia. That with is not, and I think in feminism and also inclusion, or as Georgia said, it's not only gender, and it's many ways, but it's with them. The conversation has to be with people in the transformation, in the industries. The next generation manufacturing, we need to talk with workers. We need to not only, because one thing, last thing to say, and I think everyone working with IT guys, one thing that happened into the companies is many times the techies found managers having other aims than them, doing the same, and it's quite frustrating. And I have heard many times this. I want to do things differently, but it's not a way to do that. And again, COVID shows that people wanted to work doing software from home, having conversation, having ways to, and managers said, no way, in Europe at least was, no way, you need to be here. But that's before COVID, and COVID was extremely pointing that. So that the conversation should be place it in the industries, with the people in the industries, instead of thinking about changes that could move the industries.
So if we look at the horizon, of what we already know is coming from a tech perspective. So quantum is, I think, progressing rapidly. We've spoken about AI, machine learning, things that are almost becoming indoctrinated into most businesses now. Again, looking ahead of your careers and things like that, how do we need to shift how we are bringing as a technology industry, bringing technology to bear? Because it's interesting how much today the conversation has shifted to diversity, inclusion, to management styles. I think the Pearcey, I'm hoping this is what Pearcey wanted, otherwise they're going to be saying, you didn't talk enough tech. But in that core piece around the tech industry, fundamentally, how are we going to change this so that it continues to be embedded, but we embed with it?
I think you said a lot of nerd words, Susan.
Thank you.
But I think embracing that, like I said, it often comes with a challenge, right? Because firstly, not everyone likes change. Like Hugh mentioned, I'm a software engineer too, and Hugh, you're pretty on point, right? And like these technologies, right? Getting them into an organization, regardless of their size, especially the big ones, it's often a challenge, right? And this is why the startups always get ahead, because they're quite flexible in what technologies they can use. And sort of looking into the future and how these technologies might help us, I feel like the adoption might still be very slow, because I remember when I was small, I had this book which had pictures about what the future would look like. It had flying cars, right? I actually walked here, didn't fly here, right? So I think, like everything, things will be very slow. And the technologies you mentioned, Susan, they will definitely sort of help us with work, the way we work, and so forth. But I feel like at a very high level, we wouldn't, the change would very much be very slow.
I don't know what to answer, but I think, as I said, you already said interesting things about it. And it's interesting how we didn't mention, but I know we know science fiction is quite important for tech. And I think we all of us, we share imaginaries of how things should be in the future, what we want. But for us, it's difficult to relate with these visions of future, materialize the visions of future. And sometimes the flying cars were a thing for cities full of people. 5 years ago in Europe, they said, the statistics said that in 30 years, most of Europeans will be living in cities. Then COVID came, and then people move out of the cities. So money that was into cities in the new projects are moving to new Bohemian villagers, which are the same people that it's supposed to be. So I think technology, for me, is the most, maybe I'm biased, but is the most central thing that make us the species we are. So it's kind of like, in some way, it's just coming back to a very basic notion of what is our next step, and then technology will be with us, because it's us. And there's so many possibilities, but as techies, you know more than me that possibilities are there, but then you need to do it. And sometimes the decision what technologies we do is more based in imaginaries that are coming from economic, old school economic markets. And I'm saying old school because we have different economic thinking, and we have different people thinking in the in here, not like in the borders. And I think you said this, start to think differently what we have and what we want, and then think all these possibilities, how could help us or going with us to the next step. And I'm from South America, and I have lived in Europe most of my adult life, and technology has been central in my keeping my relationships and working with people around the world, having the possibility to work with the best people living in India, UK, and that is amazing. But the most amazing thing is I can talk every day with my dad. And this, I don't know what technology it is, and it will be better technology. I can't imagine a technology that we are kind of holographically together, and I will love that. But I love what I have. So that is, I think, the changes what we want to make that possibilities materialize.
Excellent, thank you. If we can thank our last two panellists, please. And if I could ask everyone to come back and join us on the stage, please.